I have commented out exercise 1, and now we're going to start with exercise 2. I'm going to components, create a new file. I'm going to name it exercise2.js. In this video, we're going to talk about state, mainly useState. We're going to understand what is useState and why do we need to use it. So for that, we are going to build a counter. Our counter has two buttons, one for increments and the other one is for decrement. So increment is going to add +1 and decrement is going to take 1 out, so -1. Okay, so now let's start with a simple one. We're going to create a function, obviously, and the function is going to be called counter. In this function, what we want to return two buttons because it is asking us for two buttons. Since we are doing JSX, we can just simply create something very similar to HTML called button. And this one is going to be called increments. Actually. And the second one is going to be called decrements. And then we gotta have to have a div around this because we only can send one element per function. Okay, so now let's just call it oh, and then don't forget export because if you don't have export, you're not able to call it in app.js. So I'm gonna export defaults because I only want this function and export default counter. And then in the app.js, I'm going to import counter from, I don't want it from sample, I want it from exercise2. Okay, so now I am going to take this hello out and I'm going to call my function here just to see if it shows up. As you can see, I have increment and decrement button. And also here, I want to, in exercise 2, I'm going to have, let's do H3 here. For example, I'm going to say counting, and then here for now, I'm just going to say 0. When I save this, I go back here, you can see that I have that H3 tag here. So how can I update this? Another thing to notice here is that right now, my buttons do not do anything. But when I click them, so like for example, when I click increment, I want this number to be 1. And when I click decrement, I want it to go back to 0. And depending on what number it is, I want it to be changed accordingly. For that reason, I need to have a handler. I need something to handle the button whenever it is clicked. So for that reason, if we want to handle the click, there is a function that you can call in your button called onClick. When you are using onClick, that means whenever that button is clicked, this action is going to happen. I'm going to name this function handle click. So now I have to define this function. Remember that the function will be defined outside of return. So I'm going to create, actually, no, I'm going to make it expression function, so it's going to be easier to pass it. That basically means I'm going to create a constant variable, and I'm going to name it handle click. And I'm not going to pass any props right now, so I'm just going to make it empty and alert saying that the button was clicked. Button clicked. is clicked. So then I'm going to set it for increment. Now, if I save it, if I press increment, I'm going to get this alert. The button is clicked. Okay. So if I do it again, get an alert. When I press decrement, nothing happens. Okay. I can say handle click ink. And then I can say button ink. I can say increment is clicked. And another thing that I can do, I can either do if statement, I can put both of them under one function, and I can do if statement. But for now, I'm just going to create two separate expression function. So I'm going to say handle click. This time is going to be decrement. And this is equal to, again, expression alert and decrement is clicked. So now I pass this handler to my second button. And this one to the first one. Then when I save this and I go back here, if I click increment, it's going to be increment is clicked. If I click decrement, it's going to say decrement is clicked. Okay, now let me show you another way of doing this. Instead of creating two separate functions, I'm going to name this handle click. And then now, if I want to have only one function, then how am I going to figure out which button is going to be clicked? For that, I can give each one of these buttons a name. So I'm going to say name here. This is going to be ink, and the name of this button is going to be decrement. So now my buttons have name, but how can I access it from this method? The way that I can do this, there is something called event, but you can name it anything because you're just sending the props, but I'm just going to name it event here as well. Event has something called target. And then in target, you have access to all of the information of whatever was triggered. So for example, if I am clicking this button, the information from this button will be accessible under event.target. So under event.target, I will have this name. Now, instead of writing this, I can do an if statement. And here I'm going to say if event.target.name is, you have to put 3 equal. So that means the type and the value is going to be the same. And then I'm going to say ink here. And inside of this if statement, I'm going to send an alert saying that increment button is clicked. And then I'm going to create an else if statement, else if condition, and then I again will access the target, and the name of it is going to be the decrement that was created. Because again, if I press this button, if I click this button, then these information will be sent. So if the name was decrement, then we are going to alert decrement button is clicked. So this have to do the same thing, but instead of having two separate functions, we put both of the functions under one function, and we used if statement. For that, we have to have a way to access to differentiate between these two buttons. The way that we did that is by passing the event, or you can name it anything. That's just going to be a props or whatever you're sending. So then, but it is actually an event. Then under when I'm sending the event, that means the button or whatever that was clicked or the events that happen, all the information of it is going to be accessible under target. And I'm going to say I want to have the name of it. And then now I have an if statement. I'm going to say if this that you received from the button is going to be equal to ink, then alert this. So whenever this button is going to be clicked, I'm going to have this alert. Whenever this button is going to be clicked, I'm going to have this one. I'm going to save it again. We have to have the same thing. Oh, I forgot to change the names here. So right now we don't have handle click ink anymore. We just have handle click. Going to change both of these names here, save it again. Now, if I click increment, again, I get an alert. If I click decrement, again, I'm going to get an alert. So now let's do this. I have a constant called, I'm just going to have an integer. I'm just going to say, I'm going to have a constant called number, and I'm going to say number is 0. Okay. And then I want to, when I want to alert, I want to alert number plus 1. Let's just see what's going to happen if we just try to do this. So I'm going to say number is equal to number plus 1. Okay. And then here, I'm going to pass the number. And then I'm going to the second one. I'm going to say number is equal to number minus 1. Now I'm going to again alert number. So technically what we are expecting to see is that the number is going to get updated every time. And so if you're pressing this, if you're clicking this, it's going to be number plus 1. So that means this has to be a 1. And then when you're clicking this, it's going to be number minus 1. And let's just see what happens if we do this. I'm going to click increments. Well, the reason is I made a mistake and I made this a constant. That means when you're having a constant, that means you cannot change the value. But I'm going to say let's number. So now I'm going in my app and I'm going to try to run this. I'm going to increment and it's going to say 1. I'm going to increment again and it's going to say 2. And then I'm going to decrement 1. What the frick? Decrement is going to be what's keeping the value. What the hell? For alert, as you can see, it works. Okay. But it's just because whenever you do alert, you're not actually re-rendering. Whenever you want to re-render, you have to use state. So let me show you. If instead of alert, I want to show that inside of an H3. So I'm going to take the alerts out. So I can actually keep the alert there as well. But here, I'm going to pass the number instead of, okay, sorry, I have to pass the number this way. Number. So now I'm going to pass this number. That means whenever I'm pressing the button increments, that means it has to be plus 1 and that's going to be minus 1. And then I'm going to save this. So when I'm going back here, if I click increment, it's going to say it is 1. But as you can see, counting is not changed, even though I know that my number was actually incremented, but it wasn't able to update my H3 because it is not re-rendering. This is, since it is not re-rendering, H3 is not getting updated. But when we are doing alert is able to keep it because we are in the same render. We haven't re-rendered, if that makes sense. So now, and alert is showing the number, and I'm using the number here. So obviously both of them have to be updated, not one, but only alert is getting updated. Now I increment again, it's 2, but my counting is 0. I decrement is going to 1, and my counting is still 0. So how can we handle this problem? Because we don't want to always just alert the value, but we want to actually be able to update this H3 element. And for that, we need to re-render. One of the ways that React handle this is by using useState. So for that, I have to import, let's just import React as well. React and useState, and this is going to be from React. Okay, so now I want to use the useState. You have to remember that useState is a function that returns an array of two objects. The first one is the current value of whatever you have, and the second one is a function that's going to update that value. So now I'm going to say I have a constant, and my constant is an array. This array has first one is going to be the number, and then the second one, which is a function, is going to be update number. I just gave it two names because I want to receive wherever it is sent from the useState. And I'm going to say this is equal to useState. So whatever useState is going to return. And okay, so I have left here. I don't need this anymore. I'm going to take this off. So now for the useState, I am going to give the value, my prop is going to be 0. Why? Because this number has to start from something. So I'm going to say the initial value of number is going to be 0. Now, whenever an event occurs, so whenever I am clicking one of those buttons, I want the number to be updated. So I'm going to call this function, and I'm going to say I want the number to be +1 here. Whatever number you have, I want to add 1 to it. And then I'm going to take the number from here, and I am going to, this one is going to be -1. So now if we want to alert the number again, so this is again the same thing, but instead of adding it, but we are using, this is again the same thing, but we are using useState. Okay, so you knew that alert works with the previous method as well, but now let's look at H3 and see if that one works as well. Now if I increment, and then if I increment again, I'm going to reach 2. You see something very interesting here. Even though I have alerts after the update number, my alert is going to be one step behind. So that means it will execute before the re-render because it is asynchronous. So I say okay, and then my counting is 3, but what I saw was 2 in alert was 2.